Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to learn how to make blue from Jurassic World. So I've got some Renshaw's Modelling Paste and we're just going to make a rough shape of the head. Sort of similar to a fat teardrop shape. It needs to be bigger at one side than the other. And we're going to use our thumbs just to push in some rough eye sockets. It doesn't have to be too neat because we are going to add on to this later on. I've got one of my little boy's toys and I'm just using that for a rough guide, and I've also got a picture on my phone that I keep looking to. So once you've got the rough shape with the eye sockets in there, just smooth over any areas and making sure that you really push those eye sockets back to create sort of like a brow. And then we're just going to use the scriber needle and we're just going to put the mouth in. Now the mouth is quite low to the bottom of the jaw, and you will need to keep touching this up as we're working on the face. So just do a rough line, and then we kind of want the bottom jaw to just come in slightly from the top of the head. So just pushing that in place with our fingers. Again, like I said, you will need to keep going over that area. So I'm just going to go with a balling tool into the eye sockets and we're just going to push back and up. It's really important that you do allow the head to dry at least overnight before you start working on the other details, because we're going to be blending in fondant into it, and we don't want it to push out of shape. So I'm actually applying some nostrils here. I do go over these later on in the video, just because when I was putting it together, it didn't look like it was far enough out. So I've just got a piping nozzle here, usually used for like royal icing, and I'm just going to go over the entire head, just making little indentations. You don't have to be too neat with this, it is just going to be rough markings. So once you've gone ahead and covered the full head, we're just going to make some little indentations on the top lip and on the bottom lip. Now these are just really light touches with the scriber needle. You won't see them too much at the minute, but once the dusts are on later, it sort of brings in, it adds to the markings that are on the face. So just taking care to pull the lip down slightly, and we're just going to pinch it together a little bit because we kind of want it to curl round slightly. Just making sure that you don't push into the eye sockets too much. So you can see I've just made it really thin and then I'm pushing it back up. And then just redefining the lines across the mouth if you need to. Now I've allowed this to dry overnight, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to go on and add the additional features. So the first feature that we're going to add is we're going to add the bottom of the jaw. So I've just got one of my modelling tools and I'm just smoothing in that area. Now whenever you're adding pieces on like this, be sure that the piece you're adding on is a rough size and shape as to what you actually need, and then that way when you're placing it on, the lines that are made from the joining kind of can be made to look quite natural. So I've sped this up quite a bit because it did take a while just to sort of blend in that line, and then you will just have to redraw in the little bit of the mouth. To try and get this shape just using one piece of modelling paste without adding any extra in, it would take quite a while. Again, just making sure that the bottom jaw comes in slightly from the top jaw, and then just smoothing over the lines, re-going over the mouth if need be. Remember to put in those little lines that we did before. So once you're happy with the shape of the bottom jaw, we're going to go on and just make those same markings that we made before. So just using the piping nozzle and making sure that you kind of join it onto the joins that you've made. If you put some of the piping nozzle onto there as well, that'll hide some of the join if you've still got a visible join. So just making sure that you blend in underneath the chin as well, because part of that will be visible. And then we're just going to work on the eye. So just a small flat ball. Again, don't worry about this because we're going to go in and amend that. So I'm just putting in a little bit of water and I'm pushing the lips up just to make sure that they touch. And then we're going to paint the eye. So I've got some Sugar Flare Honey Gold, and I'm going to colour the full eye in this colour. And then once I've got quite a nice shade of that, you don't want it too light and you don't want it too dark. But then I've actually got some khaki green, and we're just going to go around the edge of the eye, and then we're going to pull that colour in. So paint the colour around the edge of the eye, dry off your brush and clean it, and then pull that colour in from the outside to the middle. Now if you look at these dinosaur eyes, they have a line that goes through the middle that makes it lighter. So once we've pulled this colour in, we're then going to clean the brush again, and we're going to take that line out in the middle. So just, if you've got it too dark or there's too much on there, just add a little bit of water to your brush and you'll be able to pull that off. Just have a little bit of tissue nearby so you can just wipe your brush on the tissue. So you can see I've just got a clean brush and I'm just pulling that line up and down and then pulling the colour away from where I've just cleaned. And we're going to colour this in black, but the black is not going to take up the whole of this colour that we've taken off, because we want there to be sort of like a light ring around where the black is. Again, it doesn't matter too much if you've put too much colour on. You can just re-go over it. And if you're like me, you'll be heavy-handed, so you will need to re-go over the area at the bottom of the chin, just with your nozzle. So this is what it looks like from the back, and we need to build that side up at the other side. Once you've done that and painted the other eye, this side should be dry. So again, we're just going to create that line. Needs to be thin at the top and thin at the bottom and sort of bulging out of the side. Now I had quite a few pictures of blue, and on one of the eyes he kind of has a dip that goes in, so I just push that dip, paint it all black, that line, and then just take a brush and just dip that in slightly. So she also had some darker areas in the eye of just like little kind of lines. So I took some of the chestnut colour and I just painted those on slightly. So just little sort of like wavy lines. It just really added to the detail and made the eye look a little bit more realistic and reptile-like. So once you've done this side, you can go ahead and paint the other side. And then we're just going to go and fill around the eye. So we're going to do the lower lid, the upper lid, and then some extra detailing on the head. So if you roll in a sausage shape that comes to a point at one side, and then just wet underneath the eye a little bit, and you're just going to push that into place. Now again, it doesn't have to be too neat because we're going to go in and blend all that area in. So I've just got my Vena tool. There's a wider kind of Dresden tool on one side, and we're just going to use that and then the other smaller Dresden tool just to blend in that line underneath. You want there to still be a lip to show that obviously that she's got the bit underneath the eye, but you want the actual join to be blended in and not visible. And once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and do exactly the same, but we're just going to do it for the top of the eye. So again, just a little bit of water. This one might be a little bit tricky because remember at the beginning we pulled out the top just for the top of the eye. So it can be a little bit tricky just to get in there. So using the smaller end of your Dresden tool if need be. And you're just pushing in and pulling and smoothing that area over. Be careful not to make the eyes become too closed. You want them to be quite open. If they do come down a little bit when you're pushing to try and get in and blend in that line, you can just lift the area up around the eye just to make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to create that bit at the top that I was talking about before. So again, a really similar shape. This time it needs to be thicker and the end needs to get a bit fatter. And we're just going to put a little bit of water where we need it to stick. Now be really careful not to get too much water everywhere, because when it comes to dusting, that dust is going to cling to that area, and it's not going to look as natural. It's going to look a bit different from everything else. Once you've got the rough shape, we're going to blend in the bottom again, just hiding that line, and we're going to do the same for the other side. So once you're happy with the blend and the shape of the eye, we're going to use our scribing needle and just create a little slit and some really thin lines. I noticed from some of the pictures of Blue that she had sort of like a scar in one of her eyes, and we're just going to draw some sort of really soft markings around the eyes to sort of recreate creases in the eyelids. And again, just going over with that piping nozzle just to create the same lines. So now we're going to smooth in the inner side. So you want to be pressing down and pulling towards the middle of the head. So you can see there I'm pressing down and pulling, and then just smoothing it over with my finger and re-going over it with that tip. Next we're going to go on and just add some whites in the eyes. So I've got some of the Sugar Flare white powder, and you just mix it with a little bit of water. I'm just going to draw on some tiny little reflectors of light in the eye. Doesn't need to be too big. This is what you should have so far. So this is the bit I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I ended up covering over because I felt the nose needed to just come down and be in a different bit of a shape. So same process as before. We're just going to push that on with the modelling tools and push back to blend in that line. Now if it is easier for you, you can use a tiny little bit of water just to go in up around the edges, but it has to be just a tiny little bit of water so that the fondant you're pulling over is dry. Alternatively, if you get some cling film, put in some of your modelling paste and then just tie it up, just twist the end and then just rub that over. It heats up and it blends in the line and it saves you from putting water on there. And then we're just going to use the scriber needle, just two little lines in for the nose. Next we're going to work on the body, so we're going to take our modelling paste again, roll a ball and then roll that into a cone and just flatten off the bottom there. And just check for the size of the head. Now we want to bend it. If you look at the body, we're going to bend it. Just getting our rough shape in. So there's the bend. And then we're just going to check that for size against the body. Now you can see there that I've cut it at the wrong angle and the head is looking down. So when you're cutting this time, you want to cut at an alternative angle, and that's going to give the head a look like it's coming up. Now this is going to be sat inside an egg, hopefully, for my son's 5th birthday. So I kind of wanted him to be peeking up out of the head. So I've pushed my excess down and trimmed it off. And then we're going to go ahead and create, I'm not sure what you would really call this bit, but he's kind of got like a lumpy bit on the back of his head. So a sausage shape, keeping it at a point in the middle and pulling down the sides. Again, it doesn't have to be too neat because we're going to blend that in. Check that it goes over the neck at the back. You may need to trim it off if you've made it a little bit too big like I did. Kind of wants to come to quite a point at the top. And we're just going to stick that on with a little bit of water. So once you've trimmed it to size and you're happy with the position, we're going to secure the head with 2 cocktail sticks. So the cocktail sticks are just dipped in water and then dipped in the body. You want one at the front and one at the top, and just a little bit of water, and then we're just going to attach the head. Now this is actually going to be quite sturdy by the time that we've added the additional fondant around the neck. So taking our modelling tool, we're going to blend in that neckline because we don't want that to be visible. And then we're going to add on that bit at the back. So just pushing it into place. There's a little bit of water on there, so it should stick quite well. And we're just going to blend in that area around the joins. Now with your modelling tool should be fine. If you're struggling with your modelling tool, you can use the cling film method that I showed you. And once it's done, we're going to mark in some lines for sort of like the creases in the neck. So just being careful to go down one side and then trying to match those up with the other. Just going through the top. So you can see I'm just starting to pull down and into the neck groove as I get lower, and then going over with some lighter lines at the top, and then again going over with your tip. Now you could stipple that with a paintbrush if you wanted to. I just thought that this gave a better kind of look for the kind of texture that we're going for. So we're going to cover the body in all of the tip and a few lines across the stomach, pinching it together a little bit because you kind of not want it to come to a point, but you kind of want to, you know, for it to come together a little bit. And then we're going to make a little bit for the neck. So sausage and flatten it at one side and then trimming off the excess. And this is all about just kind of pushing it into shape. So I've made like a boomerang shape, and I'm just trimming off any excess, and we're just going to stick that so it joins on from the underneath the chin into sort of like the middle of the neck. Same method as before, tiny little bit of water to attach, and just pulling it out a little bit because it needs to be quite thin in the middle. So tiny little bit of water to attach, and then we're just going to blend in those lines the same way that we've done before. So just pulling out and away from the middle, using the cling film if you need it to join in better, and pulling it up towards the middle of the chin. So again, just marking in some areas that we may have touched and sort of blended out a little bit. And we're just going to add in some extra bits underneath the chin. This is just going to hide that join a little bit and just make it look a bit more natural. And we're going to do this for both sides of the neck. We want it to look as natural as possible, so we don't want to see any joins, we don't want to see any creases, we don't want to see any dips. We're using that area just to fill out that neck bit. And again to the other side, using exactly the same method, pulling out and away. Once you've got all these areas blended in, we're going to cut some really tiny little dots, and we're going to roll these into circles and flatten them, and then we're just going to stick them at the top of the head just for a little bit of texture. Now we've got some flat circles that will stick in clusters sort of where the join is at the top, and then down throughout the neck we kind of want to make some tiny triangles, and they're going to stick on in sections down that middle part of the head. So just place these wherever and make sure you're pushing them on properly. And you can see there that I'm just putting on the little triangles and blending in that area. I think I put about 4, maybe 5 of these on the neck. Just blending it in. You're blending it in because when it comes to dusting you don't want to knock them off. And just re-go over the area with the nozzle. So when it came to dusting, I've sped this up quite a bit because the dusting did take me for quite a while to do. But I've got cream, I've got brown, I've got yellow, cream, brown, and then I've got a Cornish cream and white. So these areas, you're just going to pull together some of the colours. You don't want it to be too dark, so just a tiny little bit of the brown if you need it. And we're just going to do the centre of the chest, around the lips, and then some highlighters in the areas at the top of the eyes. My best advice, I hate dusting because I always get it wrong. Do not be too heavy with it. We're going to add a layer to this after we've finished to give it that shine, and the shine can change the colour quite dramatically if it's too heavy. So you can see I'm just applying the light colours just to those areas. And now I've got some eucalyptus, I've got white and I've got black. And I'm just painting over, like dusting over basically like the rest of the head, taking care to apply darker areas to the folds or around the eye sockets or a little bit in the mouth. It's just all about trying to get that tone so how it would naturally look. So try not to be too heavy-handed. You will dust over your eyes a little bit, but we're just going to add a little bit of confectioner's glaze that will get rid of that anyway. Be careful that when you're coming around the mouth and you're coming to the point of the nose, and even when you're going around the stomach area, that you're not dusting this darker colour over those areas, because it will cover it and then it's really hard to get it back once you've done that. So you can see I've got a smaller brush and I'm just concentrating on the in between the lips and around the eye area, just to make it a little bit darker. I've also added in a little bit of brown, and I'm just basically pulling all the colours together and just mixing them together to get a similar kind of shade as to what the dinosaur was. So once you've dusted, we're going to go in and paint the blue line that she has. So I've just got some royal blue in the Sugar Flare, and I've got a picture of blue up, and I'm just copying a rough outline of what she actually has on. So I always start off, do a rough outline first, and then we're just going to go in and cover those areas up. So on one side of her face, the blue line comes around the top of the eye, and then it goes down the body. On the other side of the face, it sort of starts just a little bit lower down below the eye and goes down the side of her body. So I'm just literally adding a little bit of water and just blending it in. Just colouring in the outline that I've made. I would advise leaving this to dry, but I'm just such an impatient worker that I couldn't wait for it to dry before I did anything else. I ended up getting blue all over my hands. So you'll notice that I've just done kind of like a rough outline for the main body, and then I'm going to go back in and add little markers to make it so it's not so much of a straight line, and little dots, trying to copy the picture as best as I can. And then we're just going to do the same for the other side, but again, remember I said it doesn't start up around her eye. So you can see I've started below, sort of like to the side of her eye a little bit. And again, just drawing out a rough outline, adding a little bit of water, and then just colouring that section in. So next we need to go for the white. So again, just the Sugar Flare powder I've got with a little bit of water. I find this better than the actual white paint. And we're just going to paint around the blue that we've drawn on. So again, it doesn't have to be too neat, doesn't have to be straight, because it's not that way in the film. Again, if you'd let the blue dry, you can see some of my areas have gone a bit of a light blue where the white and the blue have mixed. But I think it adds to the effect really. And then once you've done one side, we'll go ahead and do the other. Again, the same method as before, just painting around. Now, for my dusted pieces, usually something like this, she kind of has a bit of a wet look to her. Confectioner's glaze I don't like, the spray always ruins everything, so I just use Trex. So just a little bit of Trex on your table and just applying it to those areas, not the painted ones, just the dusted ones. And just working your way around. I'm sorry about the angle, but I couldn't pick it up because it gets everywhere. But once you've finished, you should have something like this. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, guys. If you did, please click the like button down below and leave a comment. If you'd like to see any more of my tutorials, please click the links on the screen now. Thank you.